Health and fitness requires more than just the physical work. It starts with the work you put in to grow your mind. Welcome to the Mind Gains podcast, where we discuss what it takes mentally to see results physically. I'm your host, Jess. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Mind Gains podcast. I know it's been so long since I've sat down to record an episode, but honestly, the past whatever it's been, 3-4 weeks has been absolutely crazy. So I'm excited to be back today. When I was getting everything set up just now, it felt honestly a little bit weird, and it's crazy how quickly you can forget things. And I almost started recording, but then didn't set up my actual sound, which would have been not great for me when I would go to edit and see that I don't have any sound. So I'm really glad that I caught that ahead of time because that would not have been great. I'm honestly not sure how long this episode is going to be. I feel like it might be a little bit of a shorter one just because I don't think I have too much to go over here. I feel like it's a pretty straightforward, easy topic. But at the same time, I honestly feel that way a lot of the times. And then I end up talking more than I think I'm going to. So we will see. Might be a little bit shorter of an episode, might not be. Who can tell? Today we're talking about cycle syncing, which is something that has become very, very popular. Probably within the last year or so is when I really started hearing about it. And I do get asked this quite a bit from clients as far as like, should we be cycle syncing? Is that not something that we should be doing? What are like the benefits or the downsides of it? So I want to talk about all of that today. And if you're not familiar with what cycle syncing is, essentially it is just tailoring your workouts dependent on where you're at in your cycle. So obviously this only applies to females, but depending on if you're in follicular, luteal, on your menstrual, people will tailor their specific exercise or their workouts to whatever cycle they're currently in. It's become a very, very big buzzword, like I said, within like the last year within fitness. And I feel like everyone really jumped on the bandwagon for cycle syncing. And honestly, I feel like it's just one of those new things that influencers try to make very trendy. But honestly, I am not a fan of it because I feel like it can be taken to the extreme. I'm not saying everyone does this, but I feel like it can be taken to the extreme of almost allowing ourselves permission to not push ourselves the way that we really should be in the gym if we're feeling a little bit more fatigued, depending on where we're at in our cycle, which is a very, very normal thing. But I do just think that a lot of times if we tell ourselves that we're going to feel weaker if we are, in our luteal phase or we're on our period or whatever it is, that it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. Like if you go into the gym and you are on your period and it can be normal to feel a little bit weaker, like maybe we're not hitting PRs during that time. A lot of times you are going to feel weaker just because you've now told yourself you probably are going to. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being mindful of where you're at in your cycle. I think it's important that we are, but I don't think we need to push it so heavily on ourselves that I'm going to completely change up my whole routine. I'm going to completely change up my exercise for today just simply because I'm on my period, when in reality, we probably didn't have to do that. Obviously, hormones do fluctuate for us females on a monthly basis. So if you're not really familiar with the female cycle, typically follicular phase, which starts the first day of your period, you're going to oftentimes feel a little bit stronger during that phase. This is where estrogen levels are on the rise, and we can oftentimes feel just like this extra, I don't know if you want to call it like a burst of energy. We just feel better, we feel happier. And it is oftentimes during that phase that we can be hitting PRs in the gym and just feel like we're able to push a little bit easier. Now, after that is when we get into our luteal phase, and we oftentimes can feel a little bit more fatigued, a little bit weaker during this time of the month. And it's very normal. Maybe last week you were lifting heavier than you feel like you can this week. You might actually genuinely feel a little bit weaker, but it's nothing to worry about. And we don't have to totally change up our whole, workout for the day just because we might not be able to lift as much as we did last week. So I think going into the gym, understanding where you're at in your cycle can be helpful for understanding why you maybe feel a little bit weaker than you did last week, if that's the case, and not freaking out over it, thinking that you regressed or you just got weaker from the last week. There's nothing wrong with making adjustments if you genuinely feel like that's what your body needs for that day. If you genuinely feel like, I'm 2 sets into these barbell back squats and I physically cannot get out another, like a third set that I would typically do, there's nothing wrong with making that adjustment and then moving on with your workout, as long as we're not using that as a permission slip to just not get our workout done for the day. You still want to be pushing hard. You still want to be giving your 100% effort for that day, even if your 100% effort for that day genuinely is about, I don't know, 80% of what you gave last week, or 70%, or 60%, because there are times that it is going to be that way. But again, as long as we are not using it as an excuse and we are still genuinely giving it our all, that's really all we have to do. I promise we can still push hard while we're on our period. We can still push hard while we're in our luteal phase and we maybe feel a little bit less motivated and we maybe feel a little bit more fatigued. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to completely change our workout for the day. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need an extra rest day that day. It just means, hey, maybe we make some tweaks and maybe my 100% today isn't quite where it was last week, but that's okay. I'm still going to show up as best as I can today. It really is just about listening to your body that day. And again, not putting limitations on yourself just because you're in certain phases of your cycle, because you genuinely might not feel that way. Again, our minds are very, very powerful. I just don't want us to go into the day or go into the phase of our cycle already knowing like, hey, we're going to totally switch things up because I'm approaching my period or because I'm on my period. Because the truth is that you could wake up that day and feel super strong. You could go to the gym that day and actually hit a PR. So just because you're in these phases doesn't necessarily mean your body is always going to respond that way. It's just, again, it is important to have awareness around how your body could potentially respond, but we don't want to put things out there and in our minds already accept that, I'm in my luteal phase, so I know I'm not going to be able to lift as heavy today. That could be totally untrue, but now that you've said it, now that you've put it out there, now that you're thinking about it, now that can be your reality. So it's more about focusing on what you can do, taking it day by day, listening to your body. Obviously, if it genuinely, genuinely, genuinely needs rest, you should give it rest. But what I'm saying is that we shouldn't go into every phase of our cycle with a plan to already change things up because this is what we should be doing. I just think that we should be in tune with our bodies enough to know, like, hey, even though I'm on my period today, maybe I feel like I can really push hard and really challenge myself today. Maybe that's not always the case, but sometimes it is. And I don't know about you, but honestly, those workouts where I do go into it feeling just more fatigued and maybe not fully into it, those are more rewarding because I know that I mentally and physically fought even harder to get that workout in and get that workout done, and it just feels better. So that's my take on it. Honestly, if you look at the research behind it, there's not really a ton to kind of prove that that works and that that's beneficial, especially if you are someone who has physique goals and you're trying to lose body fat, you're trying to build muscle mass, you're trying to have a lean, defined, toned look. That doesn't come from constantly changing up your workouts and maybe getting in, 2 weeks of heavy lifting, if that, every month, and then completely switching that up, going to Pilates, going to yoga, switching over to deloading for the next couple weeks. Like, that is not really going to get you where you want to be. It comes down to that consistency, that progressive overload, and not tailoring every single workout to whatever phase of your cycle you're in. And I also just don't get behind the whole idea that women are fragile when they're on their period. Being on your period does not necessarily mean that you have to do lower intensity workouts and that you can't push yourself and lift heavy. You are capable of pushing hard consistently, even on and around your period. You are not going to tank your hormones just because you challenge yourself in the gym. So I would encourage you, if you are someone who has been thinking of cycle training, obviously continue to do your own research. It's not my recommendation to cycle sync, but maybe give it a little bit of trial and error, see how you feel about it. But again, it's not so much of a feeling, it's about, is this going to get me the results that I'm after? Because we also don't want to waste our time. Regardless, listen to your body always. Don't go based off of what influencers, what trends tell you should be feeling that day. Go based off of how you actually feel and then tailor your day to that. Don't let your cycle become a limitation. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk next time.